So every year, the world's most powerful people get together in Davos, Switzerland, to talk about solving, well, the world's biggest problems. But this year, the real story wasn't what was said on stage. It was this powerful contradiction that was just lurking right beneath the surface. Let's get into it.
So on the surface, the official theme for 2026 was a spirit of dialogue. Sounds great, doesn't it? The whole idea was to push for cooperation, find some common ground on these massive global challenges. But, that was pretty much just the headline.
Because while that official banner was screaming dialogue, the private chats, the backroom meetings, and even the forum's own internal reports, they were all focused on something completely different: confrontation. In fact, it was the #1 short-term risk they identified. So you had this massive disconnect between the public message and the private reality.
Okay, so how does this paradox actually play out in the real world? Well, it all starts with the first huge theme of the event, the weaponization of economics. The key term here that you heard everywhere was geoeconomics. And think of it this way. For decades, right, we've thought of things like trade and investment as tools to create wealth. Well, geoeconomics completely flips that script. Now those same tools are being seen as powerful weapons to achieve political goals.
And look, this isn't some abstract theory. We are talking about a whole new kind of arsenal. But instead of tanks and missiles, the weapons are things like tariffs that block trade, restrictions on who can invest where, and the strategic control of critical resources. It's basically economic warfare, and it's happening right now.
And you could feel this tension everywhere. While leaders were out front shaking hands for the cameras, you can bet their teams were in back rooms hashing out threats of new U.S. tariffs, how Europe might retaliate, and even the strategic importance of Greenland and its resources. So much for that spirit of dialogue, huh?
Now, this confrontational mindset, it didn't just stop with trade. It bled right into the second major topic that was dominating Davos: artificial intelligence. AI was really presented as this true double-edged sword. It was both a potential savior for the global economy and a potential saboteur. On the one hand, the optimism was just off the charts. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, even upgraded its global growth forecast for 2026. And what did they credit? A massive investment boom in AI, which they see as the brand new engine for the entire world's economy.
Good, and this is a huge but. That very same IMF report had a giant warning label on it. They flagged a major adjustment risk. Now that's just economist speak for what happens if this AI bubble bursts. And the fallout they warned could be absolutely severe, crashing down on everything from financial markets to real-world jobs.
And all of this, it just feeds into a third, maybe even deeper crisis that was just impossible to ignore: a fundamental lack of trust. And we're not just talking about distrusting governments here. We're talking about people distrusting the very idea of a gathering like Davos itself.
So you had this image, right? Just outside the secure perimeter of the conference, you had groups like Oxfam releasing these bombshell reports, showing that while the rest of the world struggled, billionaire wealth had soared to a new all-time high. I mean, that stark contrast, it just perfectly fueled this narrative of a Davos elite living in a completely different reality from the rest of us. And the hard data presented inside the conference halls told the exact same story. The famous Edelman Trust Barometer showed that our societies are getting more and more polarized. People are retreating into their own little trusted circles, and they're becoming more distrustful of anyone outside of them. And let's be honest, it's impossible to solve big problems if we can't even agree on what the problems are.
What's really wild is that this criticism wasn't just coming from the outside. In a pretty surprising moment, one of the event's own co-chairs, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, he stood up and admitted there was a legitimacy crisis of capitalism and that the world had to figure out how to distribute the benefits of AI fairly.
All right, so when you put all these pieces together, what does it all add up to? Well, the World Economic Forum's own Global Risks Report gives us a really clear, if maybe a little sobering, map of the dangers we're all navigating. Now this chart is absolutely telling. Just look at the column on the left, our biggest short-term risks for the next 2 years. They are all conflicts that we are creating ourselves: geoeconomic confrontation, AI-driven misinformation, societal polarization. Now look at the right, the long-term risks. They are all environmental catastrophes. It's like we're so busy fighting each other that we're completely ignoring the much, much bigger storm gathering on the horizon.
Okay, this is all fascinating stuff, but the real question is, why does any of this matter to you? Let's try and translate these huge, global ideas into a simple checklist of what you should probably be watching out for.
So here's the key takeaway. Each one of these big Davos themes is really a signal, and it points to a real-world action.
For example, when you hear leaders threatening tariffs, that's your signal to map out your company's supply chain risks. When you see these dueling forecasts about the AI boom and bust, that's your signal to stress test your investments for a potential crash. It's all about turning that global talk into practical, actionable strategy.
And really, all of this leads us to the ultimate contradiction that was just hanging over Davos this entire year. In a world where every single crisis, from climate change to AI, is also a multi-trillion-dollar business opportunity, the final question we're left with is this: can the dialogue about solving these problems ever be truly neutral? That's the question we all have to ponder.